Whew. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Oh, 1 second. Just chat. Oops. No. Okay. So I guess we'll have to do just chatting. It's interesting that Twitch doesn't actually have like it doesn't let us just like define what we're doing. It has to be a game, or it has to be like just chatting, and I can't define my own tags. I can't even do a macroeconomic tag. Oh, that sucks. Anyway, so good morning, boys and girls. Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon. Oh, and good. I guess good late evening to our new viewer in East Asia. Well, yeah, you guys have been introduced. You all know each other. We're good. So what we are doing today is a little bit different. We are, well, not that different, honestly. I'm going to pontificate on the nature of on the nature of the human condition via the Solar Research Council and the Star Wars crossover. And what I really want to talk about today is the way that government and citizenry can have their incentives aligned to the point where everyone is working hard together for the good of everyone else in a non-communistical way, right? And yes, that is the proper word for it. So let's do this as Nar Shaddaa. So just a little bit of background for those of you who haven't been part of this since the beginning. I write a series of. So I have a original series that I call the Solar Research Council that is basically a study of the human condition in a world where society was unified by a scientifically minded council, the Solar Research Council. And this council is its remit is humanity in the same way that, no, I shouldn't put it that way. Its remit is humanity by taking account what humanity is, and that's very important, because what humanity is not some sort of idealized species, right? We are very much a messy species. Absolutely, we are one of the messiest species that exist on Earth, simply because humanity has that inherent conflict between the logic that we have developed and the leftover effects, the majority effects of evolution that we have, right? So you can imagine things like for humanity, things like hunger, driving, jealousy. All of these things are not, strictly speaking, they're definitely part of humanity, but they're much more a manifestation of our evolution, influencing our upper thoughts, a higher level thoughts, right? So the Solar Research Council in this case is something that takes this into account and tries to develop humanity in a way that it can continue to maintain this type of it can continue to maintain progress, and while still taking into account this, shall we say, evolutionary quirk of humanity. And it's well, it's important to me because that is what humanity is about, right? And so I have a series of crossovers that come out of this original universe. The one that I've written the most on is actually a Mass Effect crossover. That one is more of a study in diplomacy and a clash of cultures, right? So Mass Effect has these alien species that have essentially become set in their ways because they've enjoyed a couple thousand years worth of peace. And there's an interesting species that is sitting at the top of the hierarchy that has whose members live for upwards 1,000, 2,000 years. And so you can see the amount of stagnation that comes from having your leaders not change for thousands of years, right? Because once they've learned something, and it becomes harder to entice them to move away. Right, and so an entire species that is venerated as being old and wise. I'm not going to make any references to earthen cultures, even though I really want to. But yeah, so there's a certain amount of veneration for an old species, and so you can imagine that a humanity that I've talked about before that is all about progress and expansion. When it meets a more staid and almost, shall we say, stagnant society, what happens when those two cultures clash militarily? And it's really interesting. Highly recommend everyone to check it out. Book 1 is finished. Book 1 is being reworked because apparently it got too theoretical at the end. Book 2 is of that particular series is, I think, exceptionally interesting because it talks about the breakup of that alien coalition government as the threat of humanity manifests but is not manifesting inside their space. So lots of interesting topics there. But the one that we're talking about today is yes, I will get to the point. I am literally getting to the point right now. And yes, I do realize I spent 5 minutes talking about unrelated crap, but that's fine. The one we're talking about today is the crossover between the Solar Research Council and Star Wars. And this one is I'm more interested in talking about the macroeconomics of just the human condition, I guess. the macroeconomic facet of the human condition. And I'm sure we're all at least tangentially familiar with Star Wars. It's impossible to not be, especially okay, you cannot say that, because if even I know about Star Wars, then I know for a fact that all of you must know what Star Wars is, right? Like, and this entire crossover does not depend on detailed knowledge of Star Wars. I mean, detailed knowledge might get you a few Easter eggs, but not at all. It's very much you could replace the names and literally set it in New York right now, and nothing would change. I promise you, like, you could replace all of the names, set it in New York City, plop it down in the middle of Manhattan, and it would come off as real world fiction. But essentially the point is this, right? There's this big group of slightly shady organizations that sits at the edge of Republic space. They have provided lots and lots of very interesting funding to financial institutions in the Republic, and because they are not very, shall we say, they don't have many scruples when it comes to money, they are able to essentially promise financial institutions in the Republic a lot of returns, whereas they couldn't get them at home. And so that brought in a whole bunch of investments, made the Hutts, yes, I'm talking about the Hutt cartel, made the Hutts very rich. The problem, of course, is once you've entwined yourself in the Republic economy, what happens when things sort of go from stagnation, which is fine, to unrest. And so that's what happened in this particular case. Actually, let me pull up. I don't have the charts. So in this case, what happened? Well, the Huts themselves, they were dealing with a rebellion that they couldn't suppress, and so they essentially the unrest in Hut space led to a downgrade across the board downgrade in their business. We don't have anyone still that works in rating agencies, right? No, I don't think I've ever worked with anyone in a ratings agency. Anyway, the point is the ratings agencies downgraded the Hut corporations, and therefore that has made the Hut corporations very uninvestable, and that has set off a economic downturn across Republic space, across Hut space. The Hut cartel themselves imploded because they had no way of paying the mercenaries, so the mercenaries just turned around and took what they thought was theirs. And also, so the Republic has gone into a bit of a financial recession. Probably there's going to be a few decades worth of recession and depression before it can pull itself back out. And what we want to talk about today is the fallout of that inside Hut space. And this is where the Solar Research Council has manifested itself in the Star Wars universe. It manifested itself on the old capital of Hut, the Hut cartel, which they called Nar Shaddaa, but which we are now calling Evocard, because that is what the Huts took over from the natives before. Of course, the natives themselves no longer really exist, but it's an unfortunate part of what the Huts do, right? So let's call this Evocard. Do you need me to put up the map? Because I showed the map before. I can put up the map. Fine. 1 second. Just need to find the map again. There was a very nice one on Reddit. I think it's this one. Yes. Okay, so we're going to save this image to desktop for now. Yeah, no, this one. This one. Save image as. Yes. Okay. 1 quick second while I load the map. This one. Just bear with me. Yes, I know it's taking over the stream. Just bear with me. No, I'm not gonna use it to cover my face, even though it looks like it. We are going to put that all the way at the bottom. Not all. There we go. Okay, so that's what this is. And so you will notice that we're talking sector S12 on the map is Nar Shaddaa and Nar Shaddaa. Nar Shaddaa. And so just again, we've changed the name of Nar Shaddaa back to its original, which is Evocard, and now we're gonna put in Nar Shaddaa. There's a reason I'm doing this. Just hold on. Bro, just hold on, alright? Alright? Just relax. Relax, have some tea, since I don't have the root. Oh, I probably should. There we go. NSH. NS looks too much like National Socialism. Anyway. So yeah. Yeah, so where was I going with this? Essentially the Huts had completely ruined Nar Shaddaa. It's not Nar Shaddaa, Nal Hatta, and Nar Shaddaa was its moon. Its moon was being used as basically a nice place for everyone to smuggle in. It's interesting to me that add one in the middle. 50% will turn that into white, and then we'll turn this into this color, and then we'll turn this into, just bear with me for a second, into this color. Oh, that doesn't. I wonder why radial doesn't start at the center of a circle. That's, I don't understand that. It's alright. It's okay. So this is Evocar, and it's now in the process. So after, yes, I completely forgot about this. After we've essentially the Hut cartel has fallen apart, there was a redevelopment on Evocar, where serendipitously, there were a few groups that tried their best to essentially preserve knowledge, right? Like essentially, as the planet itself fell apart, knowledge was also being driven away, and so there was a group that was trying to preserve knowledge, such that, and this is because Nal Hatta, Evocar, before the Huts were driven out, was essentially a gigantic wasteland. You couldn't go outside without special suits, and so like there were groups that were desperately trying to preserve the knowledge so that they could continue living there, but also so that they could start retransforming the planet itself. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of green. Oh, that doesn't look very cool. What if we move that over here? Well, that's beautiful, but we should reverse all of this in this manner. I like that. Isn't that cool? Essentially what we're saying is, yes, most of the planet is still one gigantic wasteland, but there is hope in it because people are trying to at least, you know, make it a little bit more habitable. That green. Okay. Yeah, so in the century that followed, in the century that followed, Nal Hatta, Evocar essentially, you know, slowly rebuilt itself, and rebuilt itself in such a way that these knowledge gatherers remained at the center of society. So like the cities built up across great libraries, right? Actually, I wonder if I can draw. That would be interesting, right? So let's say this is a library. One, just blank. So this is a library. Set that to 33%. And we're gonna have, you know, some amount of background here. So because that is the library, and then all across, aside from it, you know, like, yes, I realize that looks like a middle finger. Maybe I shouldn't have done it like that. Maybe like this. Okay. So like, you know, you start having little factories around it, and that's actually extremely important, right? Because your factories really depend on knowledge, and so what better place to build up than right beside, you know, the library. And so I think this is rather cute. Um, let's give it a title. So we'll call them library cities. And so these library cities then slowly turned into university cities, and as they spread across Evocard, they essentially kept the planet, not only kept the planet alive, but also started redeveloping it and helping essentially, you know, like all the species, the former slaves and all of that, they were all welcomed, and so there was small development, and slowly, you know, they were working on terraforming the planet. And so after about 100 years, these library cities decided to form a federation, confederate, become the research council. And one of the key points is actually that these library cities, actually I should do this, these library cities were connected by great big, I have an arrow tool, yeah, they were connected by trading houses. And that's another important factor in this. So let me just here. Oh no, I don't want this in here. It's in there. There we go. So this is now a trading house, right? So our great big library cities were connected by trading houses, which really meant that, oh, that's probably which really meant that they became, ugh. Let me just ungroup this for just one moment. I have to make it pretty for myself, okay? Just just bear with me. And anyway, the point remains that these trading houses are also an integral part of what made Evocard work. And so therefore, they also got a big seat on the Solar Research Council. And so essentially you can think of this version of the SRC, let's group all this together. You can think of this version of the SRC as essentially being a combination. Where are my hotkeys? There we go. SRC, you can think of it as a combination between universities and the trading houses. And this stands in contrast to the other versions of the Solar Research Council, which are mostly collaborations between universities or research organizations and engineering firms, natural resource firms, all of these things. So in this case, this is much more about and it reflects what I want to do with the story, right? Which is that it should be about the economics, the macroeconomic portions, and so essentially the Solar Research Council itself is made up of big research universities and trading houses, and they control basically all of the government structure. Of course, the universities, because they have so much more weight, have almost essentially a veto over everything. But that doesn't mean the trading houses themselves aren't powerful. They're very powerful, and that's Yes, and 25 minutes later, we are getting to the point that I want to get to today. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. And that is how the Solar Research Council that exists on Evokar then went on to take over Nar Shaddaa, which is its own moon. But this moon is interesting because it is essentially a giant city on a moon, right? It's a giant city moon, and it exists in such a way that basically for the huts it was a nice staging area. So it included a lot of manufacturing. Of course, Evokar itself includes a lot of manufacturing, but in this case, like it was a home for smugglers, for those corporations with no scruples, where basically anything could happen. It was a smuggler's moon, and that's a thing, and that's whatever. Whatever, it's a thing. And so even while Evokar itself was being unified by the Solar Research Council and all the trading houses that made the planet work, Nar Shaddaa itself remained sort of the same type of degenerate corporate space. But because there was no more, there were no more huts on Evokar, and essentially all of the value that came from being a hut world degenerated, Nar Shaddaa and the entire system really cycled out of the most trading lanes, and so there was not a lot of external trade coming into here. So Nar Shaddaa itself had to depend on Evokar for a lot of the food, and so a lot of the trading houses that were part of like making civilization work on Evokar had their interests in Nar Shaddaa, because you're a trader, right? Like it's part of what you do, you trade. And so they had interests on Nar Shaddaa, and part of those interests was actually food, right? Because it's a city moon, they have hydroponics, I assume. But if you have a gigantic planet to the side that can grow food easier, now that it's slowly being healed, then there's no reason why you wouldn't sell your cheaper food and outcompete all of your competitors, gain market share, etc., etc. And that's obviously what you would do as a trader, and that's what you would do as a trading house, right? And so the trading houses, they even before unification, they had just take this and put it here, oh, this shouldn't be part of a group. Let me just layer this up. Take all of these, we'll take this, put it in there, go to the, oh, that can go to the very bottom. But this we'll take out of here. No, put it there. Okay. So the trading houses had maintained some connection between the planet and the moon. And so as the SRC was established, the SRC used these trading houses and their connections with the moon to start establishing their own methodology on Nar Shaddaa, right? And I will say here that I am a bit of an optimist, and I am a bit of an ideologist. And so what I wrote, and I'm just consulting my writing now, is that essentially the SRC reestablished, or rather used its connections on Nar Shaddaa to establish a for the lack of a better word, it used its connection to establish actual order within the spaces that the trading houses themselves owned. And that comes in the form of its own little university that instead of teaching, engineering or science or all of that, really what it taught was law, economics, and I should put this down. So the SRC imported rule of law, macroeconomics, and let's say independent courts. Because obviously, if it's a smuggler moon, even the courts themselves were probably stacked, right? Like, and if it were like corporate worlds, you would imagine it be run something akin to like what the East India Company was being run like. So you would imagine that there's not a lot of proper law and order on the moon. And so what the SRC, the Solar Research Council, did was establish a university that focused on the rule of law, on teaching economics, and on teaching, establishing the culture of independent courts. And that, within about 50 to 100 years, led to a boom of what am I trying to say? Led to an economic renewal on the parts of Nar Shaddaa that were controlled by the Solar Research Council. And so that quickly became the differentiating factor between SRC-owned space on Nar Shaddaa and the space owned by, the traditional corporate thug type things. And in fact here, leveraging relationships. Yes, so essentially the trading houses expanded operations and created enough room to establish these universities. And these schools then not only acted as teachers of culture, they also acted as incubators. And so one of the very first graduates of these universities created something that we'll just call the app, because I am incredibly pretentious and I love that idea. And so the app is essentially it started off really simple. It started off as a distributed waste disposal, right? And that sounds really mundane, and in fact it is. But what it did do is essentially think of it as the Uber of waste disposal. I love these comments. Oh, hello. I'm sorry, I didn't notice your message. Yeah, so essentially it became the Uber of waste disposal, and for very good reason, right? Because it managed to create this ability to how do we explain this? It allowed the average citizen. It gave the average citizen power to clean up after themselves, but also it gave different corporations the ability to pay others to do the cleanup for them, and that's actually pretty powerful, at least in my mind, because Nar Shaddaa was, and at least in canon, it's one dirty, disgusting place. And so having the ability to pay others to clean up your own waste, even if it's for very cheap, is kind of powerful. And so that's what happened. One of the very first things was this kind of app, and this helped clean up SRC space on Shaddaa. And so, it's a virtuous cycle, right? Like you have cleaner environment that allows small businesses to grow. And yes, we're getting to that. One second. The app started integrating more what is it, features. Yeah, and so essentially what happened was, oh, actually maybe I should reply just in case. Hi, sorry for the late reply. There we go. Yeah, so the app, it became this interesting super app that we're all now familiar with, like Grab, what Grab is doing, what WeChat is doing. And that really continued to spur investments and happiness in Solar Research Council space, but it didn't really do so in the rest of the moon, right? Of course, that doesn't mean they didn't expand to other corporate spaces, and of course the app did, and it did so with the, how do we say, with the tacit approval of the council itself. And by doing so, it gave the rest of the moon a taste of what civilized space can look like. Does that make sense? Right? And so it's become an ambassador for the SRC, and like it's not only a show of a power, a show of a new culture, but also it is a gigantic advertisement. And I think in the story I wrote it as in the story, oops, in lesson 2, yeah, so in the story I essentially wrote it as, because of the success of the app, it inspired other entrepreneurs in the SRC space to build different types of businesses, and as these businesses grew ever bigger and ever bigger, it actually induced a lot of competition to adopt these methods. And part of the reason why this worked was because the Solar Research Council itself used had some conditions imposed on executives. Let me see what was instill good corporate governance. Yes. And so what essentially the SRC did was, there were limits to what corporations could do and should do. And so in the model that was already popular on Evocar, executives were given a generous but small stipend. They don't get paid until 5 to 10 years after they leave the company. They don't. All of their vested shares don't get paid out until then. And so this sort of guarantees that executives are thinking about a medium-term plan for the company. And it also discourages, it discourages executives from staying at a company for longer than 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years. Because if you stay longer, like you're comfortable, but the rewards that you get aren't necessarily aren't like they'll be forever dangling around out of sight, right? So executives tend to work hard for 5 to 10 years and then leave. And that's excellent, right? Because it ensures a medium-term movement of executives throughout the corporate world. Not only that, it means nobody can build, or very few people would want to build their own fiefdom and run a company for 50 years. And that to me is one of the biggest issues. Oh, I guess our viewer on Twitch left. That's all right. That to me is one of the biggest issues in the modern corporate world, actually, because executives tend to see the company as their own personal property, and that's tragic as hell, right? Because imagine what could have happened if our friend Elon had stayed at Tesla for 10 years and then fucked off, right? Like, I'm of the opinion that we wouldn't have a techno king now. Really, like, yeah, I just, oh my god. And just tangentially, I do want to bring this up. The fact, let me put this in. What timing are we at? About 40. Elon and Bitcoin. The fact that there's a gigantic U-turn on Bitcoin in Tesla means a lot, but one of the major things it means is, at least in my mind, that it couldn't be as simple. It's not as simple as the energy investment. 100% it cannot be, simply because if you accept that Elon Musk is a smart guy, then he knows how much energy is being put into Bitcoin even before he accepted it at Tesla. If he didn't, then that would mean he didn't do his due diligence and his fiduciary duty to his shareholders at Tesla, and therefore they should sue. Right? Like, that is critical, because if he went into it not knowing how much energy mining Bitcoin would take, then he did not do his fiduciary duty. If he went into it knowing how much energy mining Bitcoin would take, then I suppose he did do his fiduciary duty, right? I assume in about 2 months we're going to hear that Tesla actually unloaded all of its Bitcoin. If it didn't, correct me wrong, that's fine. I'm sure Tesla can eat the cost of, the lost investments, but then the investors should sue for securities fraud. Yeah, I don't have a lot of good things to say about Elon Musk. Forgive me. Anyway, so let's just return to this. Otherwise, I'm never gonna stop today. It's true though, right? Like, I'm disappointed in what Elon, in the entire concept of Elon Musk, because he could have done so much better. Either become a true supervillain or become, sorry about hitting the mic. Either become a true supervillain or do your duty to society and actually don't just use it to massage your own ego, right? Like, or get the hell out of public consciousness, because at that point you're just doing damage to everyone. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's obviously not going to happen, because megalomaniacs will never let it happen, and that's fine. That's expected. Long story short, corporate governance. I did want to talk about that. Executives work for 5 to 10 years with what was vested rewards redeemed 5 to 10 years after leaving the company, and this ensures executives work in the medium term instead of the short, and also promotes C-suite turnover. I am not saying that there's nothing good about a long-term executive who takes a company and runs it for 50 years. No, I'm not. I promise I'm not. But the point is that those companies tend to be rarer than executives where they see the company as a fiefdom, right? And so, and it's as simple as that. So, oops. And so, what this means for Nar Shaddaa as a whole, is that, let's say, SRC-based management practices move from SRC-based companies out into competitors. It promotes the corporate culture. So when other companies see how well the SRC-based companies are doing, they will, once these executives come off their tenure, a lot of them get hired by companies that might not even be associated with the Solar Research Council, and that is where the power of this lies, right? Promotes corporate culture and the rule of law. And I'm not saying that all of those executives are proselytized. I can't speak anymore. I'm not saying they're some sort of missionary that is pushing the rule of law, the benefit of the rule of law, and all of that. All I'm saying is that because all of them come from the same type of background, that there is a transfer of culture, a slow transfer of culture, and absolutely you'll see new executive hires that then get fired because they are shaking up the corporate structures too much, right? But over the medium to long term, and that is let's say 20 to 50 years, if everyone else is being outcompeted, even under resistance, being outcompeted means that more corporations will adopt the SRC, right? And that's, at least to me, that is a natural thing to do, and this includes the settlement mechanisms of the SRC-backed courts. And we actually see that in our modern world today, right? Like, there's a reason why English rule of law is so popular everywhere, and why we have international courts being set up in places like Kazakhstan based on the English model. And being corporations, if it's a business dispute and it's not a rule of law dispute, corporations can choose where they would like to or which jurisdiction they would like to litigate under, right? So corporations find that SRC-backed courts are fair even versus SRC-backed corporations, and so this rule of law really promotes how much time do I have? Oh, we don't have a lot of time left, so I'll make this quick. This rule of law and fairness really promotes businesses, right? Like, you don't have to be afraid that someone will renege on a contract, because it's going to be enforced in a way that makes it easy to or it's written in a way that makes it easy to enforce. Let's put about 18. Let me just turn this into size 15. There we go. The app, corporate governance, and so what this means that slowly over a couple hundred years the SRC takes over and things are resolved-ish. And that's not to say there was no attempt at a military competition, but because all of Nar Shaddaa's food essentially came to from Evocar, and so if you're going to attack the SRC, you're essentially attacking your own food supply, and that's silly, and it certainly didn't work out very well for the corporations that did so. And so post unification, and I actually mostly wrote this today, so let me just refer to it again. There we go. So this is part of one of the most important parts I wanted to talk about today. It's that, if you guys remember, we talked about the app before. It turns out to be a instrumental in aligning the interests of the citizens of Nar Shaddaa with the SRC, because remember, the app started as a distributed waste disposal system. So how do you clean up a moon that is filled with waste? Well, you do it like this, right? Like instead of macro top-down policy, what the SRC did was the SRC offered micro payments and micro loans to citizens who wanted to, in exchange for hyper local first cleanup efforts. There we go. Right. So that is essentially what happened, and this is a very this is an alignment of state policy and citizen desires. Let's call it right, because this allowed for the beautification, vocationfication, and improvement of local environments. And you remember that's how the SRC got its own space in order, right? On Nar Shaddaa, by having its own space being very clean and very efficient. You allow a lot of businesses to work very well, and so there is a second layer to this. Let me just get to it real quickly. Macroeconomic. Because the SRC, there's not enough room, so we'll just, oops. Let me just take this over here. Macroeconomics. So because the SRC used something like the app, through the use of the app, SRC was able to determine essentially which sectors were most in need of infrastructure spending, right? Because you have the aggregate data from the app that shows you how much what people are doing in different sectors, and how they're using the money, what they're actually using the money on. You have that wonderful data that you can use to see, right? Like now you can see top down what's happening. This allowed SRC to use top down supplementary spending to, maybe we should do this. Let's do this. Top-down supplementary spending to help build up the most disenfranchised areas, bring them up to the average of the right? And that is actually what I wanted to talk about most today. It's this idea that we can use macroeconomics, combine it with things like what we see in the app, right? And use that data to really target where the stimulus is and where it should go. And that is such a powerful concept that more features? What? Oh, okay, never mind. That is such a powerful concept that I think it actually extends to, you know, how most of our central banks these days are playing around with digital money. I think, to me at least, that's where digital money could have its biggest effects. Right? Like, to me, digital money, akin to digital money in Earth 21st. Right? Like, this can inform a lot of policy because of how powerful it is. Because suddenly, as economists, you have the ability to see where all of these things are happening, and that's wonderfully important. And that's such a big change to the status quo that I think it could be revolutionary. It could be. It probably won't be because of a whole bunch of issues that we that I don't really want to talk about. Right? But anyway, so this is it for today. Oh, I'm sorry. I ignored one of our Twitch viewers. It's a shame. I should have said hi. I should have paid more attention. I didn't. I was probably rambling, actually. I was probably rambling. But that doesn't stop this from being, like, at least this to me. Thank you, actually. Thank you for that. So the comment was from the Discord was, from one of the people on the Discord, was that this is an interesting way of telling a regulatory story. Well, I paraphrased. But yeah, so like, this is why I write these types of stories, because I'm interested in exploring these types of ideas in a way that is, at least to me, less boring. Can you imagine if I just wrote a white paper on this and just, like, fucked off? Yeah, no, that wouldn't make any sense, right? So, having said that, we are at the end of today's stream. Any questions before I end this? Yeah, that's exactly it. Essentially, once the moon is unified, the SRC takes over as the overarching government. There might be, I haven't thought too hard about the economic structure yet, but I assume there'll be, you know, like, districts, sectors, because again, right, like, the idea is to be hyper localized, but at the same time to be guiding from afar, like the rest of the other iterations of the Solar Research Council. And I hope that's what they'll do. I think that's what will happen. Yeah. Any other questions before I move on? Before I close this out? Yeah, if you guys are interested, I can always talk about more of these if and when I write them. There's no reason why I cannot. The only thing that's holding me back is I don't have time to write. So yeah, I write about, how much? I write about 2,000 words a week. So I don't, it's not a lot of words because I don't have a lot of time to write, right? So it ends up just being like, I mean, I try to keep up the cadence of about a chapter a week, but that's spread across all of the SRC work, right? So both the Mass Effect work, this work, the original work, and I have one in place for for what am I saying? I have something in place for Warhammer 40k, which is more military based. I'm allowed to have interests. Come on. Okay, well, yeah, so that's it for today then. Thank you very much for watching. Okay. Yeah, one more. Go. Hurry up. I want to have lunch. Yeah, it's noon. I gotta have lunch, man. That is a good question. That is a good question. The question is, how will this interact, and what is the Republic doing right now? The short answer is the Republic is probably undergoing its own recession from having a whole systematic bank collapsing in on itself, or not collapsing in on itself, rather. It was retrenching, right? Because and this will get a little bit nerdier because we will actually go into some of the details of Star Wars. The fundamental channel of money from the Republic to HUD space, original HUD space, was the Intergalactic Banking Clan. And interestingly enough, the Galactic Republic, did not have a central bank. Its monetary policy was outsourced to the IGBC, IBC, whatever. Intergalactic Banking Clan. Crazy, right? Right? Can you imagine a government not having control over its monetary policy? But it's not like the EU, right? Because I'll put this down. What time are we at? We're at 1:02:09. Monetary policy and the EU versus IGBC and Republic and Star Wars Republic. It is not at all like the EU, because the IBC is a for-profit clan of various trading houses, families, etc., whereas the EU has outsourced its monetary policy to a supranational organization that is still very much part of the EU, right? Like, it is considered part of the EU executive because it is the central bank of the EU. So it's completely different because the mandates are different, right? Like because like the European Central Bank has a mandate for inflation, for unemployment, whereas the Intergalactic Banking Clan does not. It is a privately owned bank that just happens to be too big to fail, too huge to fail, to really have an impact on. Like it's so big that government cannot even work like regulate it, and that's interesting, right? Like, and we will actually be dealing with the IBC in this particular story in the future, because if there is a bad guy in this particular story, it is the IBC, and it is the rampant greed at the expense of both the state and the citizenry, right? And how companies like the IBC would essentially lobby and prefer stagnation in some cases to being broke, because if things are changing too much, then there's a chance of them being broken up, and then they lose their ability to print money, right? So yeah, we will be talking about all of this, or I will try to be talking about all of this. Let's note this down. Oh. Okay. Let's see. Unchecked corporate greed. Let's not say greed. Ambition. Let's call it ambition. Right? Yeah, like. That's exactly it. So someone just said, I can see why you are using this as a study of the human condition, and that's exactly it. Because we have a nice foil in the IG Intergalactic Banking Clan, and we will be dealing with them in a way that is that preserves optimism and progress. Let's leave it there for today. Why? Because I'm hungry. Okay? Okay, in conclusion then, thank you very much for watching. You guys have been fun. I'm sorry to the one Twitch viewer who said hi, who I didn't get to say hi to. If you hear this in the future, please don't hesitate to come back. I hope that I'm friendly. The guys in the Discord will disagree with that, but I think I'm friendly. So by all means, please come back. And with that, thank you very much. Bye bye. Oh no, not bye bye yet. Please download Firefox. Don't do Chrome. Yeah, because if you do Chrome, I'll be sad. I will be. I promise, I will be. So don't do Chrome. Okay, bye now.